All righty. We are live. Welcome to the Total Fitness Bodybuilding video chat. My name is Lee Hayward, and today, January 17th, we're going to be having another live Q&A, and this is something that I do every Friday. Have a live at 5 video Q&A here on the Total Fitness Bodybuilding YouTube channel, as well as the Total Fitness Bodybuilding Facebook group. Or sorry, I should say Facebook page, right? There's different groups. There's a group and there's a page. So it's streaming through the Total Fitness Bodybuilding Facebook page. So if you are joining in either through YouTube or Facebook, welcome to the chat. And as you pop onto our live stream here now, I know I see some people popping onto the stream. Please let me know if this is coming through loud and clear for you. And if it is, please just type into the chat window there and let me know if this is coming through loud and clear on your end. I would greatly appreciate it. All right, people are popping onto our live stream. So the way this works, again, is I'm going to be hanging out here for the next hour answering questions and topics of discussion that you have related to fitness and nutrition, building muscle, losing fat, any specific challenges that you may be dealing with when it comes to your workouts or your eating or building muscle, losing fat, and anything along those lines, fitness, nutrition, health, wellness, that type of topics. Feel free to type them into our chat window there. If you're on YouTube, there's going to be a chat window to the side of the video. If you're joining in through Facebook, there's going to be a comment section below the video. Type in your questions and topics of discussion, and I'll do the best that I can to help you out over the course of our video chat today. Now, generally, I can probably give you some insights because I've been involved with the fitness industry now for over 30 years, right? Started working out back in 1990, started competing in bodybuilding back in 95, started coaching people back in the late 90s. So I've been around the block for a few years and learned a few things along the way, and I'm more than happy to share what I've learned. But at the same time, I don't claim to be a know-it-all. So if you have some questions or topics that are outside my knowledge base or outside my realm of expertise, and I'm not going to hesitate to let you know that I don't know the answer. But what I can do is I'll try and point you in the right direction to somebody who can, because I have a large network of colleagues in the fitness industry who have specialities in different areas. And if I don't feel I'm qualified to help you with your specific challenge or situation that you're going through, then I'll try my best to point you in the right direction to somebody who can help. So let's see who we have joining in. All right, we got people popping onto the live stream here. Seems like most people are joining in through YouTube today, which is totally fine. Good stuff. All right, let's see. We have Lee Dunnigan, regular to our show. Glad to have you joining back again, Lee. And he says it is coming through loud and clear. We've got Robert, another regular, coming through loud and clear. Appreciate it. We have Todd joining in, saying it's loud and clear. Appreciate it. AJ is joining in, another regular. We also got Derek joining in. Derek's a new member of a Muscle After 40 Blueprint program. Glad to have you joining into our live stream here, Derek. Good stuff. Who else we have joining in? We've got Jason is joining in. Hey, how's it going? Glad to have you joining in. Good stuff. All right. While I'm waiting for people to post their questions and topics of discussion, who else we got there? Brian's joining in. Good stuff. I'm here. Sauna check-in. Okay. All right. In the sauna. Very much. Hopefully it's probably after a workout or something. I know some people like to do that. I've never really gotten into using a sauna a lot. Nothing against it. It's kind of time constraints, I guess. Like when I'm at the gym, I get in there, get my workout done, and get out. I usually don't linger around, but we do actually have saunas at the gym up where I train to, Omega Health and Fitness. But I've never really gotten into it. The only time that I sometimes will use the sauna is if it's really freaking cold out. Like if we got a really cold winter's day and I just got that, I feel like chilled to the bone inside. Sometimes I'll actually sit in the sauna for a few minutes prior to the workout to kind of take the chill out of my body before I hit the weight room floor. So sometimes if I use it as a warm-up, but other than that, I really don't use the sauna that much. Again, nothing against it, nothing wrong with it for those of you who do enjoy it, but it's just personally, I don't use it all that often. All right, we got Art joining in as well. Welcome, Art. Art's a regular to our show as well. Glad to have you joining back in. All right, we do have some Q&A coming through there as well. Good stuff. All right, so we'll get into answering some Q&A. One thing I do want to give you a heads up on as well, This past week, I launched another episode of the Total Fitness Bodybuilding podcast and had special guests joining me. An old friend of mine, Mr. Nick Nilsson. Those of you who've been around the fitness industry for a while, you probably are familiar with Nick. Nick is one of the OGs of the online fitness industry. Started back in I don't know exactly when he started online, but the first time that I heard of him was in the early 2000s. So we're talking like well over 20 years ago. And he had some books and courses and programs back in the day, but he's really one of these guys who thinks outside the box when it comes to structuring effective training programs for strength and muscle growth specifically. And we did a podcast and I launched it earlier this week, or published it earlier this week, I should say. If you haven't checked it out already, I would highly recommend. It is a podcast where we go into detail about some advanced training methods. And this is stuff, especially if you are a more advanced trainer yourself, you've been training for several years, and you feel like you want to bust out of a plateau or try something new to help spur on some unique muscle growth. You're kind of feel like you're stagnant with your current approach. This would definitely be a good system to follow to help spur on some new muscle growth, new strength gains. And I've started experimenting it with these workouts myself. Now, I'm still very early on in the journey, but I just started implementing some of the things that we were covering. And man, it's been interesting to feel the muscle stimulation and the soreness that I normally don't experience. Because with my traditional workout programs, I find I rarely get sore from training anymore. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like, you don't have to get sore to make progress, but if you do get sore, and it's the good soreness, I'm not talking about like an injury or something, but that soreness where you know you had a good workout, you know you stimulated the body in a way that it's not accustomed to. That's the kind of sensation that I'm going through now. And I can tell like I'm spurring on muscle growth and doing things that it's just like, mind blown. It doesn't feel like it should be possible. And the phase that I'm going through right now is the angiogenesis training phase. And we discussed that in detail in the podcast. And so I'm looking forward to giving this a try for myself, implementing some of it. And maybe in the future, after I've gone through a prolonged period of this training, get some real world feedback from it, we'll probably do a follow-up podcast to elaborate on it. But again, if you're looking for something outside the box to help spur on unique muscle growth, I would highly recommend checking out the podcast. And it's the most recent podcast there. It's up on the Total Fitness Bodybuilding YouTube channel. It's also on iTunes. It's on Spotify, Amazon, like all the major podcast platforms. You can listen to the audio, but I would highly recommend watching the video because we do have some video footage and pictures and images there to kind of back up what we talk about. And that's the way I do all the podcasts, right? I publish the audio for those of you who want to listen to it on an audio platform. And I totally get that, especially if you're listening to podcasts while you're driving or, maybe you're at the gym or something like that and you want to listen to it. Totally get it. But it's nice to have the visuals to back it up. And especially when we're explaining different concepts and stuff, I usually do put the visual overlay there. So if you want to get the most benefit from it, I would recommend watching those podcasts on YouTube. And of course, if you're watching this, it's a good likelihood you're probably also subscribed to the Total Fitness Bodybuilding YouTube channel. So again, just wanted to give another plug for the podcast there because this was a good one and I'm going through it myself and I'm excited to really see the results of this style of training moving forward. All right, who else we got joining in? We got a lot of people popping onto our live stream here now. Good stuff. So we're going to just start diving into some of the Q&A that are coming through here. First question of the day goes to Matthew. He says, I've been doing the delt exercises that you recommended to me for my right shoulder pain on the Facebook group. I've been dealing with that for a week now. It's getting a little better. I'd follow up there. I think I was neglecting rear delt work. Yeah, so Matthew actually shared this. He posted to the Total Fitness Bodybuilding Facebook group, which if you're not a member of our Facebook group, just do a search for Lee Hayward's Total Fitness Bodybuilding on Facebook, and you can request to join our group. And this is a great place where we can keep that conversation going throughout the week. And if you have specific questions related to your training, you can post it there to the group. And myself, as well as some of the other guys, will feel free to chime in and help out. But that is a public group. There's no charge to become a part of the Total Fitness Bodybuilding Facebook group. It's just a way to kind of keep that conversation going throughout the week in between these live video chats, and we can go into more specific detail about you and your specific questions that you have. So it's a great resource there. So Matthew was mentioning that he was dealing with some shoulder issues, and one of the things with the shoulders is it's a very fragile area. I mean, it's a very mobile area. You got full 360-degree rotation in the joint, but it's so easy to stress and strain the shoulder joint, like the rotator cuff. So like when it's working fine, that's great. We want it to be working fine. But if something gets strained or pulled or, God forbid, torn, it can really hinder your training. And one of the root causes for a lot of shoulder issues is, one, just poor mobility. People are not taking the shoulder through that full range of motion. Now, like they're probably working in a single plane of motion, or just the repetitive movement patterns that they get caught up with their day-to-day work, or in their choice of exercise selection at the gym. And more often than not, the front delts get overworked in comparison to the rear delts. Like, unless you're purposely doing rear delt work, they're not going to get the same degree of stimulation as the front delts. So you really want to kind of go out of your way to do extra rear delt work. And if you've been neglecting it, then I would actually prioritize it and probably even tip the scale in favor of more rear delt work in comparison to front delt work, to help balance out those shoulders and prevent future injuries. And like I say, we shared a mobility shoulder routine that he can follow, and he said he's been doing that now and getting some progress. I mean, it's literally only been a week, or probably even less than a week now since he posted that. But I'm glad to hear that you're starting to see some positive reinforcement just in that short period of time. And moving forward now, you definitely want to really prioritize the rear delts. All right, who else we got there? We have Maddie joining in. It says, Lee, what was it like when you had to shave your body for your first competition? Any tips? What did you use? Shaving cream, hair removal shampoo, or cream, or wax, or permanent hair removal? Oh man, okay, that's I remember that well, and I actually made an article about this a while back and wrote about it because it was kind of a comic situation. And there's actually a section in my ebook that I wrote. I have an ebook called Your First Bodybuilding Competition. And anyone who's interested in doing a bodybuilding competition, I highly recommend you check that out. It was up on Amazon as a hard copy book back in the day, but now I have it as a digital download. If you want a copy of that, reach out to me and I can hook you up with it, because I don't even think I have it listed on my website anymore now, because it was an older program. I kind of save it for some of my coaching students who are going through bodybuilding contest prep. But again, if you want a copy of Your First Bodybuilding Competition ebook, just drop me an email. Contact information's down in the show notes below here. Just drop me an email, drop me a Facebook message with the words, Your First Bodybuilding Competition, can you send me it, or something like that, just so I know what it is you're referring to, and I'll hook you up with a copy of that. But there's a whole chapter in there talking about hair removal, because it's an issue. It's something like nobody talks about it, but you see all these bodybuilders and physique competitors on stage, and once you start sizing up, you realize, hey, like these guys don't have a body hair anywhere. Like, why not? Where did they go? Right? There's not a chest hair, there's not a back hair, not a leg hair, not an arm hair. Like, they wouldn't actually shave those hairs, would they? Yeah, they do. And it's one of the most freaking tedious parts of bodybuilding, right? I don't think anybody enjoys it. It's a bloody nuisance, but it's part of the process. And I remember the first time I ever tried to get rid of body hair, it was a disaster because I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And I ended up using a razor, like, a blade razor, like you shave a razor for your face. And I used it, and I tried to shave my legs. And long story short, there was a lot of nicks and cuts, but the problem is it irritated the skin, because that's anytime you shave skin that's never been shaved before, it can get very irritated. And I broke out in the nastiest case of razor rash afterwards, and it's not a good experience. What I found better was getting an electric razor. Now, back in the day, my mother had an old electric razor that actually worked quite well. It was, I can't remember the brand name it was. Maybe it was a Philips was the brand name she had, but it was an old one that she bought from, I'm talking like back in the 80s or even earlier, right? It was an old one, but it worked really good, right? And it was a plugged in cord one. There was no such thing as batteries back then. It was, everything was plugged in, but it worked really good. And I found like using a razor, like an electric razor, works good because even though it doesn't give as close of a shave as a blade, it gets rid of the bulk of the hair, which is all you need, and it doesn't irritate the skin as much. And nowadays, like you can go get these like manscaping razors and stuff like that that can serve the purpose for shaving body hair. Something along those lines, to remove the hair without aggravating the skin. Because when you're drawing a razor blade across your skin, man, like that just, sure, it gets the hair. And I mean, you have as close a shave as you can be, but it irritates the skin afterwards. And I know some people are going to say, okay, you can use all kinds of shaving lotions and creams and crap like that, but it's still going to irritate the skin. Whereas I found the electric razor, it doesn't irritate it, and it still gets rid of the hair. So, like, I'll be honest, I don't shave my body hair on a regular basis. It's not something I do. I mean, when I was competing, I used to do it as a regular thing. But what I did was using the electric razor, and I found that that was the easiest way to go about it. Now, I know some people do the whole waxing and all these different things, but just the electric razor I found was simple, did the trick, and it was the least invasive in terms of skin irritation afterwards. So I'm just curious now. I'm going to pop open another screen, see if I can find that. I might have it up on my website. I'm trying to by geez, I think I do have it here. Hang on. It's even published up on look at, I don't see if that link is active. Just give me a second. Wow, it's even published on bodybuilding.com. Back in the day, I used to write articles for bodybuilding.com. This was actually fairly recently too. I mean, 2019, which, you know, in the greater scheme of things is not all that long ago. All right. But yeah, if you do a search for Lee Hayward shaving body hair or shaving body hair for men, it should pop up there. Yeah. Neat. Okay. Yeah, I'm actually going to post that link there in the description. I know there's the majority of people watching this are probably like, I don't give a shit about shaving body hair or whatever, but there's a few of you, especially if you're into physique competition or whatever, you're actually probably interested in that. So I'm going to post the link there in our video chat so you can go check that out. And if you want a bit of comic entertainment, right? Because in there I covered the conversation I had with my dad first time he found out that I shaved, right? Like, how do you explain that to your old man? Hey, what'd you do today, Lee? Oh, nothing. I just shaved my legs today. You did what? Right? Like, excuse me? You did what? Right? So I share that in that article. But there you go. You can check it out if you want. All right, where else? Next question. Let's see who else we have joining in. Oh, we have a question here from, just give me a second, guys. I lost my spot there in the chat window. City, appreciate the support. Says, I have a two-part question. All right, we'll try our best to answer them. Says, firstly, I want to strengthen my knees. What kind of workout do you recommend for beginners? Second, is it worth to buy or make your own electrolyte to replenish after the gym? All right, two good questions. Now, first off, strengthening your knees. If you could elaborate on what you mean by strengthening your knees, that would certainly help, because just general leg training, you know, your squats, your leg extensions, your leg curls, your lunges, leg presses, the general training is going to strengthen the knees. But what is it specifically that you're dealing with? Like, do you have any injuries, specific knee pain, or have you had knee injuries? Because depending on the age and the circumstances, it may be more to it than just simply training and working on the joints, tendons, and ligaments. I'll give you an example. Like my father, he had to get his knees scoped out, where they actually removed old dead cartilage and old tissue that was built up in the knee, like kind of like a, I guess, scar tissue around the joints, cartilage in the knee. He had to get that done a couple times. Some people have to go to the full extent of getting knee replacements. Like there's actually some guys in our coaching program in the Muscle After 40 Blueprint who have had their knees replaced, right? So it depends on where you're at in your knee pain journey. That really is going to determine what the next course of action is. So if you want to elaborate a little bit more, I might be able to give you some more clarification on that. But the second question that you have about electrolytes, you can make your own homemade electrolytes drink. And this is something I would actually recommend have before the workout, not after. You want to have the electrolytes in your system when you need them, not simply replenishing them afterwards. Because if you don't have adequate electrolytes, like you're deficient in sodium and potassium and you don't have it in your system, that's going to hinder the actual workout itself. You want to have it in you first so that you're going through your workouts feeling strong in the gym, feeling well hydrated in the gym, and you're able to function at maximum performance. Because if you are dehydrated or if you're deficient in electrolytes, that's going to hinder your strength and athletic performance. So we want to have that in you while you're actually in the gym. For me, what I do is I mix up a water bottle when I go to the gyms. Like this is actually one of the water bottles I'll take with me. And I'll put amino acids, which actually have electrolytes in them. So it's just essential amino acids. A lot of them do have some electrolytes mixed in with them, but it's not a very strong solution for most people. Like it's a little bit, it does help. But what I will also add to my water bottle is I'll put in some sea salt. And in terms of measurement, probably like a quarter of a teaspoon if you're actually going to measure it out. For me, I just take the salt shaker and I put a few shakes of salt in my water. Like I can kind of eyeball it. I've been doing it long enough that I know approximately what a quarter of a teaspoon is. But if you want to actually measure it out, you can do so. A quarter of a teaspoon of sea salt, or any salt will do. I just like using sea salt. That's my personal preference, but I'm not going to get into the debates over which salt is better. It's like salt is salt. As far as electrolyte and replenishment, they all work the same. And I'll also sometimes put in some potassium, probably like a quarter of a teaspoon of potassium. And you can get either like potassium tablets or capsules, pretty much any supplement store, or even the vitamin section at the grocery store. You should be able to buy potassium. They usually come in 99 milligram tablets or capsules. I don't know why, but that's just the standard dose for most of them. You could take a couple of those. You could also get potassium powder. And this is one that I bought it online. I got it here on the shelf. Just pure potassium chloride, a big bulk. Like this is a kilogram bag. So it's 2.2 pounds of pure potassium. So I'll just take like a quarter of a teaspoon of this and add it to my water bottle as well. And that provides electrolytes, because those are the two key ones that you need to focus on, the sodium and the potassium, so that you're pulling the water into the cells and your body's functioning properly. And I would drink that during the workout itself. So as you're hydrating your body, those electrolytes are helping to pull the water into the cells where it's going to be needed. And it helps you to retain the fluid that you're drinking. Because if you're drinking fluid, but you don't have enough electrolytes, sometimes it can just flush right through you, and it actually doesn't have the same hydrating benefits. But when you have the electrolytes, it pulls the water into the cells where it's actually needed and where the body can utilize it. And this is critical. Like a lot of times guys shun electrolytes and they think, well, like salt is bad, sodium's bad. I've heard it's not good for the heart. So I don't want to have any salt. I try to keep my salt as low as possible. And that's actually a mistake. Like electrolytes and sodium are critical. You need it to function. Now, you need it in the right amounts. And the thing is, for most people, assuming that you have healthy kidney function and everything's working properly, when you consume high sodium and high electrolytes, your body will utilize what it needs and then flush out the excess. So it's actually better to be on the generous side when it comes to electrolytes versus the conservative side and not consuming enough. Because if you don't have enough electrolytes in your system, then very often you're going to feel weak. You're going to experience muscle cramps. Sometimes you might even feel dizzy. You feel lightheaded. Your performance is going to suffer. But when you have adequate electrolytes, you're going to feel strong. You're going to get better muscle pumps. So, I mean, it's a very powerful thing. Like a lot of the downsides that people experience when dieting, like especially people say, oh, I've been I've been eating, I'm on a low calorie diet and I just feel so weak and flat and I can't get a pump in the gym. Sometimes it could be because they're in a calorie deficit, but a lot of times it's because of lack of electrolytes and especially lack of sodium. Because when you're eating processed foods, most of those foods are high in sodium. So if you eliminate processed foods from your diet, things like breads and packaged foods and crackers or chips or pizza or bagels and whatever, like anything that comes in a bag or a package or a can, like it's usually packed in sodium. So if you start cutting out a lot of those processed foods and those quote unquote high carb foods, which are really just processed carbs, very often you're not consuming the same amount of electrolytes. You're not consuming the same amount of sodium, and it's the lack of sodium that's actually making you feel weak and flat in the gym. So once you start consuming adequate sodium and adequate electrolytes while you're training, very often you feel stronger, get better pumps, and experience better workouts. So do that, but do it before the training so you're actually consuming it while you're in the gym, not saving it till afterwards. All right, who else we have joining in? Let's see now. Lost my place again. Just give me a moment there. AJ's got a question. What do you think of hot and cold therapy for helping with muscle gains and recovery? All right, it's not going to directly affect muscle gain per se, but it can certainly help with recovery and specifically reducing muscle soreness. And that's where I found the best benefit of the hot and cold therapy. And there's lots of ways to go about hot and cold therapy. I mean, the best way would be if you have like a hot tub and a cold shower, or a hot tub and a cold plunge tub, or something along these lines, like where you can do the full-on exposure of hot and full-on exposure of cold. That would be the best. But even something simple like you're in the shower and you flip the water to hot, flip it to cold, flip it to hot, flip it to cold. I mean, as hot as you can comfortably stand, of course. I mean, don't scorch yourself, but flip it to the point where it's hot, a little uncomfortably hot, but you can still stand it. You're not burning yourself there, and stay in that really hot water for a minute or two, and then flip it to cold, and then stay in the cold water for about a minute. And generally speaking, you probably do about half as much in the cold as you would in the hot. But the idea between the hot and the cold is it circulates blood throughout the body, because when you have the hot water, what happens is it flushes the blood to the surface of the skin. You get that hot flushed feeling. When you have cold water, cold exposure, it pulls blood to the core, right, to keep the core warm. So you're indirectly flushing blood throughout the body without physically doing anything. It's just the temperature changes is what's flushing it back and forth. And I found this is really good for alleviating muscle soreness. So if you have soreness in any particular area, this hot and cold therapy can certainly help to speed up the recovery and make you feel better and get back to normal training sooner. I mean, indirectly, it's going to help with your gains, but like it's not like, oh, I do hot and cold therapy and now I'm huge and ripped and jacked. Like it's marginal gains. Like it's going to help speed up the recovery process, which then indirectly can help with the growth process. But nobody's going to attribute growth to simply hot and cold therapy alone, right? You still need to get into the gym and train in a progressive overload fashion, fuel your body with the proper nutrients, like get adequate sleep, rest and recovery, the old fashioned way. Like all that stuff is still the foundation. This hot and cold therapy, this is kind of like a marginal gain, a marginal edge to stack on top of that, but it can certainly help, and it does have its place for sure. So any way that you can do it, like a cold swimming pool and a hot shower, a cold swimming pool and a hot tub, a sauna and a cold shower, like anything where you're getting drastic changes in temperature, right? That's what you're looking for. Who else we have joining in? We have Maddie from the Caribbean. That sounds nice. Caribbean sounds good right about now, as I'm sitting in Newfoundland, Canada, with it was snowing today. So yeah, I can certainly appreciate that. Actually, it wasn't snowing today. It was snowing yesterday. I should clarify that. It was actually quite pleasant today. It wasn't much wind, and it was a bit overcast, but it wasn't much wind. It was quite a nice, calm, clear day for getting out and around. Good morning. Good morning to you, my friend. Good. Well, it's a good day. Good. I always say good day because it depends on where people are joining in from. It could be morning, noon, or night. Let's see. Lee's got a question here. It says, can you settle a discussion between me and a friend? He thinks fasting 2 days a week is good. I can't see how starving your body of food and nutrients for 2 days a week is good. Agree to disagree and move on. It's not worth your breath. If someone's convinced that fasting is good, let him fast. I mean, hey, he's the one who's doing it, not you. Right? So this this is like opening up a can of worms because there are some benefits to short-term fasting, but you got to look at the bigger picture. I mean, I have experimented with fasting. The longest I've ever fasted for was 4 days. I did it kind of like as a I was reading about, the so-called health benefits of it and just wanted to kind of experiment and test it out. I have done shorter fasts, like a 24-hour fast and stuff like that before, but I wanted to just kind of test it out. And it's very interesting. Like you can learn a lot about your body and your metabolism and stuff and just how you react by trying it out. Now, for full transparency, I don't encourage it. I mean, I'm kind of on the side of the discussion that you're on. Like I don't believe starving yourself is advantageous for most people unless you're going through some specific doctor recommended thing that you need to fast for. But for the average person, I definitely don't recommend it. And for athletes, I certainly don't recommend it because I mean, when you deplete your body of food and nutrients, like it's not helping. You're certainly not going to build muscle in a fasted state. Right. So from an athletic point of view and general health point of view, I don't advocate it. But I just want to share my personal experience of fasting. The first day is kind of hit or miss because you're going through your natural hunger fluctuations, like up and down, up and down. So the first day is pretty hard. By day two, it's surprising. Like your hunger kind of stabilizes. And day two, day three, from the fasting point of view, and this is what I experienced, and I found from talking to other people who've done prolonged fasting, it's pretty similar. It gets easier the longer you go. And even when I did, like, I remember I went 4 days, and it wasn't like I was starving and I had to, like, I was like, oh my God, I'm so starving, I got to eat. It's like I felt I could keep going. It's like your body just kind of like shuts off normal appetite like you go through in a normal day, and it starts tapping into burning its own tissues. I mean, obviously it's going to burn fat tissue, but it's starting to burn through your glycogen and your muscle tissue as well. So you don't, that's crazy is that the longer you fast, the less hungry you get. I guess it's just kind of like your body's survival mechanism in a way. And there is a time and a place for this, but, for people who are going through situations where there's famines and we don't have access to food. I mean, the body is built to survive, so it can actually survive prolonged periods of time without food. But it's not necessarily something that you want to do on a regular basis, especially if your goal is to get bigger and stronger and improve your athletic performance. Because that's what I found was the biggest thing is your energy levels are just very limited. Like there's no high octane energy in the tank. Like you can probably function doing simple stuff that's not very demanding, but if you try and push yourself hard, you got very little energy because whatever energy is in your system, I mean, you just deplete it so quickly. And then it takes a long time for your body to break down body fat and convert that into energy. That's a very slow burning energy. Whereas carbohydrates, glucose, blood sugar, the stuff that you get from eating food, that's your high octane energy. That's the stuff that you're going to use for high intensity activity. So if you're fasting, high intensity activity is like out the window. There's no high intensity training getting done, or certainly not getting done at a high level. I mean, you could still go through the motions with a workout, but you're not going to be setting any PRs or anything like that when you're in a fasted state. And of course, your body is very catabolic because you're going to be burning through fat mass as well as muscle mass. The weight is going to plummet, but as soon as you start to eat and refeed yourself, the weight is just going to pile back on. Just as quickly as you lost it, you'll rebound and gain it all back. Right. I believe when I did my 4-day fast, I lost something like 10 pounds over the course of 4 days. But as soon as I started eating and fueling up properly again, I put it all back on within the course of a 24-hour period afterwards. I just it's almost like a sponge soaking up water. So yeah, you lose a lot of weight, but as soon as you start eating, you just fill it back out again. So it's not really a good weight loss tool in the greater scheme of things, because very often people overcompensate. Yeah, I fasted for so long, but then you overcompensate in the future, right? That's what I find typically happens with most people. But anyway, that's my personal experience with it. I'm not a huge fan of it from a practical point of view, especially if your main goal is strength and athletic performance. You need to feed the machine, right? They say you can't out train a poor diet, but you also can't out diet poor training. And if you're fasting, then and you're trying to out diet, no, it doesn't work either. You can't out diet poor training in this situation, right? I know most people who are doing it, they're thinking of it as a shortcut to lose weight, but it's really not a sustainable long-term thing, in my opinion. The risk of lean muscle loss is very great when you do prolonged fasting. All right, let's see. How come we never get to see you on an Olympia stage? If you'd win, I would be like, yeah, that's my coach. Well, there's multiple reasons. Anybody that's familiar with bodybuilding, first off, knows I've never been a pro bodybuilder. The best I've ever done was win the Newfoundland Provincial Championships back in 2007. And that is a level 1 show. Like, to become on the Olympia stage, first off, you have to win your local level. Then you have to go on and win the regional level. Then you go on and win the national level. Then you have to go and qualify on the pro level, qualify for the Mr. Olympia. Like, it's working your way up. The furthest I got, I won a local level show. Now, from all practical points of view, I was proud of that. I mean, heck, it was the highlight of my bodybuilding career, right? I've done 15 bodybuilding competitions, and the highlight was I won a local level show. I just don't have the genetics to become a pro level bodybuilder, right? I found that out after 15 competitions and, years of training. Like, I did my first competition at age 17 back in 1995. And so from 1995 up until 2011, I was competing almost every year. Now, there was some time in there where I didn't compete, like when I was going to college and stuff. I took some time off there, and there was a few little gaps, but pretty consistent. Like, I did 15 shows from 95 till 2011. And then I took a hiatus from bodybuilding because I realized, okay, I don't have what it takes to become a pro bodybuilder, right? Like, I was getting older. I'm not getting any better. Like, okay, I don't have what it takes. And that's something people have to realize in sports. Genetics play a big role. Like, even though you may love the sport that you're doing, not everybody has the genetic hand to become the best in the world, right? So it's just inevitable. The best in the world is the best in the world for a reason. Like, to put things in perspective, to win the Mr. Olympia competition, there's more people who have won the lottery than have won the Mr. Olympia, right? So, like, that's your odds. And I'm sure, like, most of you watching this right now, you probably don't think, you're probably thinking, I'm probably not going to win the lottery. If we're going by the odds, there's a good likelihood I'm not going to win the lottery in my lifetime. And you have even less of a chance of winning the Mr. Olympia, right? So that's why you haven't seen me on the Mr. Olympia stage. Right? I just don't have it in the genetic hand of cards, right? But I appreciate you for sharing that. I mean, I did step on the local level bodybuilding stage and the regional bodybuilding stage, and I did that for multiple years, and I certainly enjoyed it and had fun competing in my own realm against, people of my low level caliber. But I don't have what it takes to step on a pro stage or even qualify and become a pro. All right, who else we have joining in? We got John joining in. Welcome, John. He says, how many grams of protein do you recommend in a meal? The general rule of thumb for protein intake is you want to consume a gram of protein per pound of ideal body weight per day. So just throw out some simple numbers. Let's say you want to weigh 200 pounds. You want to shoot for 200 grams of protein per day, right? That's a lot of guys. That's kind of a good benchmark to shoot for, because I know a lot of guys probably want to be around that 200-pound mark. Now, if you want to be bigger, then eat more, right? Like, if you want to be 250 pounds, then eat 250 grams of protein per day. But generally speaking, a gram of protein per pound of your ideal goal body weight. And then you want to divide that equally up amongst your meals. So let's just say you're eating 4 or 5 meals a day and your goal is 200 grams, then you would have 40 to 50 grams of protein per meal. That would be ideal, to have equal protein feedings throughout the day and have it spaced out equally. Now, I know that doesn't always work out practically. Some meals are going to be bigger than others. Like a lot of times dinner is a big meal for some people, and then you may have some smaller meals throughout the day. Like maybe breakfast is a smaller one, lunch might be a smaller one, maybe a before bed snack is a smaller one, but dinner with the family is the biggest one. Then it's okay to go higher in protein for the bigger meal. But generally speaking, if your goal is to get around 200 grams of protein per day, you want to be shooting for about 50 grams of protein per meal and having at least 4 meals a day. Like that's kind of a good guideline. Like that's what I personally shoot for, because my target protein is around 200 grams of protein per day, and I usually shoot for about 50 grams of protein per meal. Now, with that being said, some meals are higher, especially like if it's dinner or a bigger meal, it would probably be higher in protein. Some are going to be lower, especially if it's like a light lunch. Like maybe for lunch, sometimes like today, for example, I had a garden salad with a chopped up chicken breast in it. Total protein intake for lunch was probably 30 grams. So that was a little on the lower end. But then for dinner, it was up on the higher end, right? Because I had a bigger dinner. So, you can fluctuate, but generally speaking, 50 grams is a good target to shoot for. Now, one thing I do want to acknowledge here, because some people are probably concerned or wondering, is there a maximum? Like, hey, is there a certain level of protein where if you eat more than that, then it's all going to waste? Because that was an old school myth that was going around for years. Like, oh, the body can't absorb any more than 30 grams of protein per meal. And if you eat more than 30 grams, it's all going to be gone to waste. That's a crock of BS. Like, it doesn't evaporate. It's not like, oh, I eat 50 grams of protein, my body's going to utilize 30 of it, and then the other 20 are just going to evaporate into thin air. No, your body's going to absorb whatever you eat, right? If that was the case, I could go to the all-you-can-eat buffet, or I could eat, a whole bag of potato chips and say, well, my body's only going to absorb half these potato chips, and then the rest are just going to evaporate. No, your body's going to absorb whatever you put in your gullet, right? If you put it down your pie hole, the body's going to absorb it. The only thing is it's going to take longer. So if you eat a big meal, like let's say you have 100 grams of protein, it's still going to absorb 100 grams of protein. It's just going to take a lot longer, and it's going to be more stress on the digestive system, and you're probably not going to feel very energetic while your body's in that rest and digest phase. I mean, I'll give you a prime example that we probably can all relate to. Think of like Thanksgiving Day dinner or a big meal like that, where you eat and eat and eat till you're ready to burst, and then you go and you eat some more. And you're just like, oh my God, I feel so full. I'm stuffed. I can't eat another bite. I just want to lie down on the couch and sleep it off. Like that's the way you feel after eating too much. And it's not a very nice feeling, and it places a lot of overload on your digestive system, and you just got to let that food rest and digest. Whereas if you eat smaller, more frequent meals, you don't have to go through that sluggish overload. You feel more energetic, and you're able to keep your energy levels higher throughout the day because it's not stressing your digestive system to the point where you got to go lie down and sleep it off. Right? So that's why it's more advantageous and more practical to have smaller meals than these big gorge yourself meals. So, right. But it all gets absorbed, right? Regardless if you're eating 10 grams of protein or 100 grams of protein or more, I mean, your body's still going to absorb it. So it's not like, I only absorb X amount of protein and the rest goes to waste. It all gets absorbed. I got David joining in. Hello, David, and Happy New Year to you as well. We have JE joining in saying, on barbell squats, I feel my inner quads get sore the next day, but don't feel my outer quads. Is that normal? It can be, and it depends on where you're placing a lot of the stress. And you can manipulate how you activate different areas of the muscle depending on the width of your stance, how you position your feet, stuff like that. There's different ways to activate it. If you want to get more of the outer sweep in the quads, a lot of times people will do squats and leg presses and things like that with a narrower stance. You could also try isolating and pre-exhausting your quads with, say, like leg extensions or lunges or something like that before you actually get into your squats, if you want to really target certain areas. But generally speaking, I mean, as you train the muscle, it's going to get bigger and stronger all over. Just give me a second, guys. My phone is dinging there. All right. But if that is an issue, like you really want to target more of the outer sweep of the quads, I would probably do more close stance work. With your like leg presses, you could try doing close stance squats and see how that works for you as well. Another one that I've been utilizing a lot lately, and I really like it, especially for isolating the quads, slant board squats. If you have access to a slant board, I highly recommend it. If not, you can even kind of make up your own version of a slant board as well. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. I mean, at the gym that I train at, Omega Health and Fitness, we actually have a proper slant board set up with the grip tape and the angled wedge. But you can kind of make something up yourself, or even just elevate your heels and do really narrow stance squats with your heels elevated. And that really places the stress right on the quads, and you'll feel like, I find the entire quad, right from the teardrop, the outer sweep, like the whole front of the thighs, it just kind of lights them up when I do the slant board squat. And I just do them for high repetitions, using a full range of motion, going all the way, ass to the floor. Like I go all the way, squat all the way down to my hamstrings and calves touch. Like that's how deep I squat with those. And I find that when I do that full range of motion on the slant board, it really fires up the quads. I mean, I get muscle soreness and stimulation from that, sometimes even better than doing regular barbell squats or leg presses. So, you could do that as either a pre-exhaust or a finisher to the rest of your leg workout. That probably helps spur it on. But it is normal, right? I just want to, you're asking, is it normal? Yeah, it's pretty normal to find certain areas probably get more stimulation than others, or you feel it in certain areas more than others. But you can manipulate your exercises to target the areas that you want to focus on. Okay, a follow-up question here. This was follow-up to a question we had earlier about the body hair removal. Matthew's saying, for hair removal, I'm using a Norelco electric razor to trim the hair down without the guard. And when I'm done, I use exfoliating gloves with body wash in the shower. It's tedious. Friggin' right, it's tedious, but if it works, I mean, again, it's getting back to the thing. I find the electric razors, again, I don't have a particular brand in mind, but that tends to be the best way to go about it. At least that was my experience. I don't know, maybe some people have better options, but that's the one that I found works the best with the least irritation. And it's fairly quick as well, because I mean, you get a good electric razor, I mean, you can cut through the body hair pretty quickly. Whereas if you're using a razor blade, man, that's slow and it's always getting clogged up with hair, and then the blade gets dull, and then you're scraping the crap out of your skin underneath. And then the worst part of it is then a day or so after, you get that razor rash, which it's like your skin breaks out in acne. That's what it feels like, but it's like it's on fire, and just it's not a nice feeling at all. But yeah, electric razors tend to be the way to go. Mana says, do you think pushing every set to failure is a worse way to gaining strength than leaving 1 to 2 reps in reserve? We actually, I posted a video today on the Total Fitness Bodybuilding YouTube channel answering this exact question. So I would highly recommend you go check that out. The video title is, give me a second, I'll find it for you, but it's right up on the Total Fitness Bodybuilding YouTube channel. I just posted it this morning. It's called Should You Train to Failure? Is it worth the risk? Right? It was posted 9 hours ago. Right? You can go check that out. It's the most recent video on the channel. Well, besides this live stream that I'm doing right now. I would highly recommend you check that out, because it goes into a lot of detail. It was actually a clip taken from the podcast that I did with Nick Nilsson earlier this week, where we went into detail explaining the pros and cons of training to failure, when you can do it, when you shouldn't do it, and basically give you a well thought out answer versus just the yes or no answer that a lot of people throw out. But to answer your question here, I'm more of a fan of leaving reps in reserve most of the time. Now, again, there are situations where training to failure can be helpful, but for most people, I recommend leaving a rep or two in reserve. And you can still train in a progressive overload fashion while leaving reps in reserve. But those reps in reserve, that's your buffer between you getting injured. Because when you're pushing it to failure and you're emptying the tank and you get to the point where your form is breaking down, sure, it's maximizing muscle stimulation, but it's also maximizing your risk of injury. I mean, you think like in the bottom of a bench press, you're stapled to the bench. You cannot get that barbell off your chest without a spotter deadlifting it off. And you're straining your guts out to try and press it. You're at risk of pulling or tearing a pec. You're at risk of blowing out a rotator cuff. Like everything is straining at max. And especially if you're lifting heavy weights and you have the ability to generate a lot of force, the risk of injury is very often too great. Whereas if you just stop a rep or two shy of failure, you can still stimulate the muscle, but do so without risking injury. And that's why I'm a big advocate of leaving reps in reserve, is not so much from the muscle growth point of view, but it's the injury prevention point of view. And if you can stay injury free and be more consistent with your workouts, that over the long term is going to lead to way more muscle growth than if you push to failure, get injured, pull something, tear something, or set yourself back. I mean, like if you push your bench presses to failure and then you tear a pec, that just totally shot your gains. You just effed yourself up the keister with that one, because if pec tear, okay, that just doesn't bounce back, right? That's something that's going to scar you for life. Like you'll never be the same afterwards. So you want to avoid serious injury at all costs, and simply leaving a rep or two in reserve. And a phrase I like to use is keep it below red line. Like don't always, push it 100%. Just the same as when you're driving your car, you don't always want to drive it to red line and beyond, right? Keep it below red line, right? There's a reason why cars have built-in rev limiters to prevent you from blowing the motor and going above red line, right? But the old school cars never had that, so you could literally blow the motor by going above red line, right? Same idea applies with your training. Keep it below red line, and you can be in the game for the long term. If you keep going above red line, pushing the limits, you're probably going to blow the motor, or in this case, blow out a joint or tendon or ligament or muscle. So injury prevention is the key here. That's more important than pushing to failure. What else we got there? We have UT Che, the Tabby Ginger Cat Vlogs. Wow. Hi, everyone. Ho, Coach Lee. Guys, please don't forget to press the like button. Thanks. All right. Appreciate it, Mr. Tabby Ginger Cat Vlog. Right, that's one of the more unique usernames, but I appreciate it. And yeah, absolutely, if you are enjoying the video and you're getting some benefit from it, give us a thumbs up. I would certainly appreciate it. Right, it all helps. Let's see, is anybody going to push the thumbs up button? Let's see, there's a few people pushed it already. All right, give her a thumbs up. Who's pushed the thumbs up? We've got on Facebook, Bill posted it, Spencer did, Jason did, Jose did, Steve did, Chad did, Jason, William, and it says two more. I don't know. It caps out. So there's more people who posted the thumbs up, but I appreciate it, guys. Thank you. All right, what else we got there? David's saying, just train, never drink water or anything when training, in, out. Okay. I wouldn't recommend that, but if it works for you, more power to you. We'll agree to disagree. I always recommend keeping yourself hydrated. Right? Getting dehydrated is I'm not sure the exact numbers, but for every percentage of dehydration, your athletic performance and strength drops off so much as well. Like I don't know the exact numbers off the top of my head, but it's proven. Like the more dehydrated you get, the weaker you get. Right? You just see strength and performance just drop off with dehydration, and it makes sense. I mean, the body is mostly water. I mean, if you're running low on water, your body's not going to function properly. All right, a follow-up here with City's question saying, I feel like my knees are weak after doing any leg workout and it takes some time to heal. So I thought maybe I need to make it strong. All right, you're probably getting some joint pain, and again, it's if I was sitting out having a conversation with you, or we were actually in the gym training together, we could unpack this a lot more. But like, I really want to know, like, your knees feel weak after doing a leg workout. Like when you train, sometimes you will get some aches and pains in the joints, tendons, and ligaments. Now, you it could be due to poor form, like that's one thing. It could be due to some pre-existing joint issues that you have going on. It's something that may correct itself over time. Like as you build up your strength and your conditioning, sometimes that joint pain can alleviate itself. So there's a lot of stuff to unpack here. First off, when you're doing your workouts, if there's any particular exercise that really hurts or causes a lot of knee pain, don't do it and try and find another variation instead, or at least try and modify your technique in some way. So, for example, like if you do barbell squats and it just destroys your knees, then maybe barbell squats are not the right one for you. Maybe you want to try a different variation. Maybe like try a hack squat or a pendulum squat instead. Maybe even try doing a Smith machine squat. Maybe try squatting with your feet further forward or feet further back or wider or narrower. Try some variation to see if you can work around that joint pain. And this is a good tip I want to share as well for people who have knee pain, especially with leg presses, but it can also apply to squats, especially if you're doing a machine squat. When you place your feet high and wide on the foot plate, it tends to place more of the emphasis on the hips, the hamstrings, and a little less stress on the knees. When you go lower and closer, it tends to place more stress on the knees and less on the hips and the hamstrings. So depending on where you want to place the emphasis. So like, let's just use the leg press, for example. You want to avoid knee pain, I would go higher and wider. So like visualize my screen as the plate of the leg press, feet high and wide, right up in the corners. Right? That's where I would put my feet up to. If you want to emphasize more quadriceps and the knees are not an issue at all, you can go closer and lower. And of course, anywhere in between, like you can experiment as well. But generally speaking, the higher and wider, the less knee pain you're going to experience. So that's something you might want to try. And even if you're doing like a squat machine, like maybe a hack squat or a pendulum squat machine or something like that, same thing applies. Higher and wider with your feet, generally the less pain you're going to get in the knees, whereas the closer and lower you put your feet, the more it's going to emphasize the quadriceps and also place the knees in a more extreme range of motion. So probably will place more stress there. Another thing you can also look into, if it's kind of like a Band-Aid approach, but a lot of people find it helpful, is knee sleeves or knee wraps. Sometimes that can help you to get through your workouts and alleviate some of that pain. Now, it's again, realize it's kind of a Band-Aid solution, but sometimes sometimes we need to put on a Band-Aid, right? So you could try that. I mean, I've done that before, put on like elbow wraps or knee wraps or something. Like anytime if I had some elbow tendonitis flaring up, for example, I'd probably put on an elbow wrap. Or if I had some knee pain, put on a knee wrap or a knee sleeve. So that's something you can look into as well. But the big one is trying to adjust your workouts accordingly so you're not aggravating it with your exercises. And that's one of the nice things of training in a well-equipped commercial gym with a lot of different equipment is if a certain exercise or a certain variation hurts, then probably you can try another variation to still work that same muscle without causing the aggravation to the joints. Right? And that's what I like about training at a commercial gym, which can be challenging if you're in a home gym setup where you have limited equipment, right? Because you're kind of, you have to make do with what you have available. Whereas in a home or in a good commercial gym, there's probably several different squat variations that you can do, several different leg press variations you can do, or different leg extension variations and things like that. All right, we have Neil joining in. Neil's a regular to our chat. Excuse me. Is it normal to have the dominant side to have a better mind muscle connection compared to the non-dominant arm leg? I mean, have a better right shoulder retraction compared to my left. Excuse me. Yes, that is totally normal. And generally speaking, you're going to feel more comfortable in your dominant side, right? Like if you're right-handed, chances are you're probably going to get a better muscle contraction in the right side. You're probably going to be stronger in the right side. You're probably going to have more muscle definition, more separation. Like very often you will notice a difference in your dominant side versus your non-dominant side. Just the same as, like, if you're right-handed and I say, okay, write your name with your left hand, it's going to feel weird. Like, you'll probably be able to do it, but it's going to look all over the place, and your hand is not going to feel as coordinated with the pen. And it's just like, oh man, this feels so weird. It sucks. The same applies with your workouts. You're going to feel more coordinated, more strong, more connected with your dominant side. That's just the way we're linked up. I mean, most people have a dominant side. I know there's a few outliers who are, can use both sides independently and equally, but those are few and far between. Like 99% of us we're left-handed or we're right-handed. Right? You have one or the other, and generally that's going to make a noticeable difference. You're going to feel more connected with that dominant side. So it's not necessarily right, wrong, good, or bad. It's just the way it is. But the good thing is with consistent training and by incorporating single limb exercises or exercises that work both sides independently, you can help to minimize that over time. But you'll probably always have, the dominant side is probably always going to be dominant. Like you're never going to take your non-dominant side and make it your dominant. Well, I suppose technically you could if you really forced it, but for most people it's not going to happen. You're always going to be stronger and more coordinated with your stronger side. And this applies right across the board. Like if you look at top level bodybuilders, like a prime example, the most famous example of all, Arnold Schwarzenegger. Like, go on Google and do a search for Arnold Schwarzenegger front double bicep and look at his right bicep compared to his left bicep. The right one is way bigger, it's way harder, it's way more peaked, looks way more impressive. I mean, the left one still looks great, but it's nowhere near as good as the right, right? Like there's an obvious visible difference. Like you look at Arnold Schwarzenegger front double bicep, right bicep is way the hell better than the left. And you look at a lot of top level bodybuilders, they're the same way. They're stronger or bigger or more muscular in their dominant side than they are in their non-dominant side. So that's just normal. It's normal for everyone. So there's nothing wrong with you if that is the case. It's just you're normal. All right, we have King Live 2025. Hey, how's it going? Glad to have you joining in. We got Jason joining in. He says, how's it going? I'm doing well, thank you. He says, how would be a good way to add in yoga to my lifting? Been doing 2 full body days, mostly compound lifts, big 5 and 3 days of yoga. You think this is enough? Weight training to add some strength and keep what I have. 48, by the way. Thanks. I think that is all right. A great way. I mean, like I do like incorporating flexibility, and yoga is a great way to do that. It depends on how intense you're doing it, because this is the way I usually focus my workouts personally. Is I will do my weight training in the gym, and then I'll take a few minutes after the weight training to stretch out the muscles that I just trained. So I'll take 5 to 10 minutes after my weight training workout to stretch. And in that stretching, I'll do specific stretches for the muscles, but I usually throw in some yoga pose stretching in there as well, like upward and downward dog and different yoga variations, just to kind of like total body stretching in there as well. So I kind of incorporate it as a finisher to my regular workouts, but it's not a big session. Like I'm talking like 5-10 minutes max. If you want to do a more extensive yoga session, then you want to separate it from your weight training. Because yoga, especially when you start getting into a lot of the holding the different poses, like especially like the warrior poses where you're kind of like into that lunge position and you're holding it. I mean, that's hard. Like anybody who's never done it don't underestimate it. Like that's hard. And like a lot of the different bridge poses and different types of yoga poses, even the downward dog, like most guys can't do that and hold it comfortably. Like it takes a lot of strength as well as flexibility and mobility to get into those positions and to hold them properly. So yoga can be a workout in and of itself is what I'm getting at. So if you're going to do a full-on yoga session, like a half hour or more, do it separate from your weight training gym workouts. And the great way to do it, hey, weight training one day, yoga the next, weight training one day, yoga the next. You could do it like that. But that would be a great way to add both of them. And I'm a huge advocate of that. I have a video. If you do a search for like Lee Hayward yoga for bodybuilders, I think it'll pop up. It's a video I made a few years back talking about my experience of adding yoga to my workouts, and that's how I was basically doing it. But even before I got serious into bodybuilding training, like I was very much into flexibility training because I started off doing martial arts. And of course, with martial arts, we really emphasized flexibility and mobility work. So I had that as a good foundation, and I kept that up throughout my years of weight training. I never ever went through a phase where I avoided stretching and flexibility entirely, which is unfortunately what a lot of guys do. Right. We actually talked about that in our most recent podcast, myself and Nick. I said, like, when it comes to training priority, most gym bros, weight training, top of the priority, right? That's number one. Cardio is, cardio sucks, but I do it every now and then. Stretching is like at the bottom of the bottom, right? The lower than a snake's belly in a wagon rut. We're talking like low level on the priority list. People like, I hate stretching. I never stretch. Stretching is a waste of time until something goes wrong and they either have injuries or mobility issues or whatever. And then they realize, oh, shit, I should be stretching, right? Probably would have helped alleviate some of these problems I'm dealing with. So we want to prioritize it all. We want to prioritize the strength training and the cardio training and the flexibility and mobility. Like, obviously you can still, emphasize what your main goal is, but you don't want to neglect anything. Is what I'm getting at, right? You don't want to neglect anything and have these glaring weaknesses. All right, we're going to get ready and clue it up because we've already gone over the hour here, but I know there's a couple other questions I want to address, and then we'll clue it up. Azim saying, I have a follow-up question to Maddie's question. Ever thought of organizing your own bodybuilding competitions, starting small and with time you can get sponsors and make it big? Thoughts? I've been a part of our local bodybuilding federation in the past. I was actually on the executive of the Newfoundland Bodybuilding Association back in the day. Honestly, it's not something I'm really interested in. It's a lot of work to pull off a bodybuilding competition. It's a lot of expense, a lot of headaches, right? I know what it's like from the promotion side of things as well as the competitor side of things. And unless you're very passionate about it and you've got a good team of people to help you, honestly, it's not for me. Like at the stage I'm at now, I'm going to be totally transparent. I'm just not that passionate about it, right? Like I still enjoy bodybuilding and I'll still help out. Like back when we had our local competitions, I would be the MC for our local bodybuilding shows for the last several years, and I would help out and stuff like that. But to take it by the reins and organize a full-on event, like that's a business in and of itself, right? Like the work required to do that, unless you got a full team of people who you can delegate all this stuff out to. And I mean, to do it as a one-man show, it's a big endeavor, and it's something I'm not interested in at this stage of the game, right? But I did help out and was on the executive organizing shows in the past. And like I say, it's a lot of work, a lot of headaches, and there's a lot of shit that goes on behind the scenes. This applies with any sport, right? Like once you start getting tangled up in the weeds and dealing with people and all the controversy that can go on behind the scenes and stuff, right? I have a lot of respect for people who pull off, show promoters and stuff like that, right? You have to have thick skin and a lot of patience and deep pockets, a lot of those things to pull it off. And quite honestly, at this stage of the game, I'm not interested in doing that. All right, what else we got there? Jeff's got a question. Said, I was told at Planet Fitness, Smith machine is a piece of poop for building chest. Is that true? No. I mean, at Planet Fitness, they don't have barbells, but it doesn't mean that they do have Smith machines, but it doesn't mean that it's a piece of poop. A lot of bodybuilders have used Smith machines and gotten great results. I'll give you one of the most famous examples. Former Mr. Olympia Dorian Yates used the Smith machine a lot. Like he did Smith machine squats. He did a lot of Smith machine presses. Some people like the Smith machine and it works well for them. Other people don't like the Smith machine. Like you're allowed to agree and disagree, just the same as like, hey, I like a certain car, I don't like another car, or I like a certain bicycle and I don't like another bicycle, or I like a certain food and I don't like another food. You're allowed to have your preferences. So some people might say, "Hey, I don't like it. I think it's a piece of shit." Other people might say, "I love it. I think this is great." And that's fine. So it's really up to the individual whether they like it or not. Personally, I'm not a big fan of the Smith machine for most exercises. I would rather a barbell variation most of the time. Prime example, like a barbell squat or a barbell bench press or barbell shoulder press or something. I would much rather do a barbell free weight barbell variation versus the Smith machine variation. But there have been certain exercises that I did like the Smith machine for. Um, One that I used to use it for a lot back in the day was a reverse grip bench press. I used to like it for that. Um, I actually made videos. If you do a search for Lee Hayward reverse grip bench press, you'll see me actually using the Smith machine for it. I found it worked really well for that. Certain exercises it works well for, and some people actually like it for the squats and presses and whatever. I personally don't. Right, so it's really a personal preference thing. But with that being said, as I mentioned, some very advanced bodybuilders have utilized the Smith machine with great results. So it's not necessarily a POS. All right. Another quick question here. Sean saying, what do you think is more rare, a 315 bench or a 405 squat? I know both are rare. I just mean overall. It's this, again, both are rare. So, I mean, which is more rare? I would probably say a legitimate 405 squat is more rare because I think the bench press is more of an ego exercise and more people are striving to have a big bench than a big squat. Like the only people who are really striving to have a big squat are real serious lifters who are thinking about like power lifters, Olympic lifters, generally people more advanced. Whereas the bench press is more of the ego exercise. And I just think ego would probably drive more people to get a 315 bench before they get a legit 405 squat. But again, that's just, I have no studies or science or statistics to prove it. This is just me rambling on out loud. That's my thought, but I'm probably right. City saying, thanks, I'll take it into account. Appreciate, seriously. Good stuff. And, keep me posted. And if you want to follow up with this conversation, City, like feel free to join us over on the Total Fitness Bodybuilding Facebook group. If you're active over on Facebook, you can certainly, post your there and keep that conversation going throughout the week. Sean saying, do you still take creatine? I hear other than strength or muscle mass, it's good for anti-aging and cognitive health. Yes, I do. I take creatine 5 grams a day, every day, and have been for years. I started taking creatine back in 1995, and I've been pretty much consistent since. I mean, there has been times when I've not, I've ran out or whatever, but for the most part, I've been taking creatine consistently since 1995. That's when I first heard about it. That's when it first kind of went mainstream and took the supplement industry by storm. Jason saying, thanks. You're welcome, my friend. Adolfoff. I'm Martinez. How do I say it? Alifo? I'm nailed it. Got your name nailed it there. Says, I can do more strict pull-ups than strict inverted rows. Any thoughts? It is strange. Inverted rows are easier for most. Is it strange? Yeah, okay. Generally speaking, more people are stronger with the inverted row, but inverted rows are still hard as well. Right? I mean, it's not an easy exercise by any stretch. Like pull-ups are hard, inverted rows are hard. Generally, most people would be stronger with the row than the pull-up, but hey, everybody's unique, right? So I wouldn't overthink it. It's just that's the way it is. But it is the exception, not the rule. We'll say that much. All right, and I think that was the last question that came through. So I'm going to get ready and clue it up. I feel that was a victory. If I can get through a whole slew of questions, right? A whole video chat of questions before we run out of time. So again, thanks so much, guys, for joining in. I always enjoy doing these live Q&As with you every Friday. And just a heads up, Friday live at 5. If you're tuning into this for the first time, you want to join us next week, we'll be going live again Fridays live at 5 on the Total Fitness Bodybuilding Facebook page, as well as the Total Fitness Bodybuilding YouTube channel. And in the meantime, if you have any questions or you want to elaborate on anything that we discussed here today, feel free to reach out to me. My contact information is down in the description below this. Right? You can email me, or you can join us over on Facebook. You can send me a Facebook Messenger message, and I'd be more than happy to have a chat. And we'll keep that conversation going. So in the meantime, have yourself a fantastic weekend, and I look forward to talking to you next week. Take care. Over and out.